Cinema is often described as a window into human emotion, but some films go further. They become a mirror for society itself. They show us the mechanisms of authority, the weight of norms, the violence of institutions, and the trembling humanity that survives underneath it all. In this video, we explore 10 sociological films that don't just entertain, they interrogate the world. Each reveals a different dimension of collective life: power, obedience, rebellion, identity, resistance, exploitation, trauma, and hope. No spoilers, only insight. Let's begin. 10. Das Experiment: The Fragility of the Social Mask and the Birth of Power. This film examines how ordinary individuals transform under the pressure of imposed roles, revealing how quickly social masks can turn into instruments of domination. Inspired by real-life psychological experiments, the story becomes a chilling sociological study of the construction of authority, the seduction of power, the collapse of moral boundaries, and the terrifying ease with which social order can become social violence. The film asks a difficult question: are oppressive systems created by powerful individuals, or do ordinary people willingly become their architects when given permission? Das Experiment reminds us that society is not held together by laws alone, but by the thin, breakable fabric of shared humanity. 9. Modern Times: Industrialization, Mechanization, and the Struggle for Human Dignity. Charlie Chaplin's masterpiece examines the impact of industrial capitalism on the human body and mind. Without ever losing its humor, the film exposes the alienation produced by repetitive labor, the commodification of human time, the reduction of individuals into cogs in a machine, and the emotional exhaustion created by technological acceleration. At its heart, Modern Times is a sociological meditation on what happens when society values productivity more than people. Chaplin shows us that efficiency comes at a cost, and that cost is often the human spirit. 8. The Platform: Inequality, Scarcity, and the Violence of Social Hierarchies. This film presents a powerful allegory about resource distribution, class struggle, and the psychology of scarcity. Each level of the structure represents a different social class and with it, a different moral universe. Without revealing plot points, the film explores how inequality shapes behavior, how privilege narrows moral vision, how hunger becomes a social weapon, and how systems maintain themselves even when everyone knows they are unjust. The Platform is a brutal reminder that inequality is not simply an economic problem. It is a sociological condition that shapes every interaction, every choice, every hope. 7. The Stoning of Soraya M. Gender, Power, and the Violence of Tradition. This film is a devastating portrayal of how patriarchal structures use tradition as a tool of control. It explores the sociological machinery behind gender-based violence, collective complicity, the fear of social exclusion, and the power of narrative when controlled by the dominant group. What makes the film so impactful is how it shows ordinary individuals participating in extraordinary cruelty, not because they are evil, but because they fear social punishment. It is a profound commentary on how societies justify violence in the name of morality. 6. Fight Club: Identity Consumerism and the Crisis of Modern Masculinity. This cult classic dissects the psychological emptiness produced by late capitalism. Without touching plot twists, the film explores the construction of identity through consumption, the desperation for meaning in a materialistic world, the sociological roots of discontent, and the dangerous allure of extremist ideologies that promise rebirth. Fight Club asks, what happens when a society teaches people to buy identities instead of discovering them? The film illustrates how alienation becomes fertile ground for rebellion, and how rebellion itself can become another form of control. 5. Dead Poet Society. Conformity, freedom, and the battle for individuality. This film explores the tension between institutional authority and personal identity. In an environment shaped by strict expectations, the characters struggle with the pressure to conform, the fear of disappointing family and society, the longing for authenticity, and the power of education to liberate or to silence. The film beautifully illustrates how society shapes young minds, and how breaking free from inherited norms can be both transformative and terrifying. 4. V for Vendetta. Surveillance, fear, and the architecture of totalitarianism. This film examines how authoritarian systems manufacture fear to maintain control. It explores propaganda as a sociological tool, the psychology of obedience, the weaponization of surveillance, and the thin line between safety and submission. Without revealing details, the film demonstrates how narratives shape nations and how a single disruptive voice can awaken collective memory. V for Vendetta is not about one masked figure. It is about the people who learn to see through the mask of power. 3. The Pianist. Survival, dehumanization, and the fragility of civilization. This film portrays with heartbreaking clarity what happens to the human being when society collapses into brutality. It reveals how identity becomes precarious, how survival replaces dignity, how violence reshapes social relations, and how culture, music, art, memory remains the final refuge of humanity. The Pianist reflects a harsh sociological truth. When institutions fail, individuals face the raw weight of existence alone. 2. Harriet. Resistance, liberation, and the collective struggle for freedom. This film explores the sociological foundations of resistance movements. Harriet Tubman's journey becomes a case study in risk as a tool of liberation, community solidarity, the socio-political mechanisms of slavery, and the power of collective action in shaping history. The film shows that freedom is never an individual act. It is a collective force built through courage, sacrifice, and shared vision. 1. Schindler's List. Bureaucracy, genocide, and the banality of evil. Rather than focusing merely on historical tragedy, the film examines how bureaucratic systems enable mass violence, how ordinary individuals become agents of atrocity, how moral choices fracture under totalitarian regimes, and how compassion survives in the most unlikely circumstances. Sociologically, it is a study in Hannah Arendt's idea of the banality of evil, how the machinery of power makes cruelty seem normal. Schindler's List is not just a film about the past, it is a warning about what society becomes when humanity is abandoned. Why these films matter? Each of these films is not just a story, each is a sociological lens, showing us how individuals are shaped, constrained, broken, or liberated by the systems they live in. Cinema becomes a classroom for society, and these 10 films remind us of one timeless truth. Before we can change the world, we must first understand how the world shapes us.